I want you to keep in mind this letter A as we go through this decoding process. And as I said, the A is an inverted V, and V equals the 22nd letter, and it has an I, which is a 9 on the alphabet, but 9 is also a representation of yang, okay? And together, 22 and 9 is 4 and 9, and 4 plus 9 equals 13, which equals 4, okay? And what we're talking about is the crossroads. One of the other things that I have also found in my research, because I wanted to know, is there anything that represents the Y in an inverted form? And what I found was the Mercedes logo. Now, I did a much deeper dive in terms of how this inverted Y in the Mercedes logo pans out, but I'll just keep it short for you here. The Mercedes is a representation of Mercury, okay? And Mercury is Wednesday that governs Gemini and Virgo. So again, we're back to this twin flame energy of the X and Y chromosome in the light form, which is the zodiac, okay? And we're talking about the M, and we're talking about the Gemini and the Virgo, and they are connected because the Virgo is actually the genie in the bottle. So you have the Gemini symbol, which is the two pillars, but there's also like a box in there, and that box is a representation of the bottle. And within that bottle is the M, because if you take the M out of Gemini, you get genie, and then you have the M, which is a representation of the Virgo sigil, but it also includes a fish, which is Pisces. And the fish is a representation of either the Vesica Pisces for the divine feminine, but also for a baby, for a child, okay? And we're talking about the man-child, and we're talking about Jesus being associated with the fish, okay? Now, I didn't skip over J, and there's no way that I can leave you hanging with the name Jesus and not dig into this a little bit deeper. And we're going to get into it. But I just want to preface this by saying that the 941, okay, which I have done an extensive breakdown on this particular individual and entity in my abacus audit, and the numbers 941 and how that ties into Crowley and Awas and this intersex deity that is worshipped beyond duality. And there are so many iterations of the same deities across all cultures, across all religions, but AWAS specifically was found in 1904, and these numbers are crucial because this is the code for this particular entity, and I have pointed out exactly who this person is, okay, in the modern day. And a lot of us make a mistake of looking at these people in the Bible and we're thinking that, oh, this is something that happened in the past. No, this is a codex script for what is happening right now on the world stage. So keep in mind that 941 is the number of this particular being manifested in the physical or the flesh that a lot of people are current day worshiping, okay? And I don't need to get into names, people, or places because personally, on a personal note, I've already had my run-in with these people, okay? That was back in 2021 before I didn't know any better. And I purchased a book, or a lookbook basically, for a wedding just for inspiration. And after that, my life got turned upside down. The accusations that people make about this particular person and, hexes and curses or whatever the case may be, been there, done that. The difference between me and those people is that I didn't get on the internet running my mouth because A, I know a lot of people don't believe things when you say them, and B, what I was more focused on was how did they do this to me and what can I do to protect myself? So yes, I had to learn how to uncross, okay? How to take spiritual baths and get that energy up off of me so I can get back to my life. But everything has changed since I gained Christ consciousness and I'm able to do this. And now I fully understand why someone of this level would want to do something like that to me, because at the time I was like, man, I'm making good money. I'm in New York. I'm in a 6-figure household. I have a nice place. I have a good job. I work in Manhattan. I'm having a good time. I didn't have any issues. Okay. And I'm like, I'm not anyone for you to be doing all of this too. But the deeper that I climbed into my spiritual awakening, the more that I understood my power. And with a lot of these people on this world stage, the problem is that in order for them to gain the wealth or acquire what it is that they have to suppress the actual people with the power. So this is what all of these people are talking about: destiny swapping and a person taking your life and using your energy, siphoning your energy. Yeah, there is a reason why I went through what I went through and why I am here teaching you this right now, and why I don't feel that it's necessary for me to even name drop, because honestly, I let it go. Okay, from 2021, when I went through what I went through with this entity and went through all of the scary stuff that I went through, and I learned from it. I got rid of the anxiety and the worry and the stress and learned how to protect myself. I had all but dropped that. Okay, I wasn't even focused on this person. I wasn't even thinking about it. But you know what? The more I decoded, the more I uncovered truth, the more I went through this process, which is why I'm the 99th problem. The closer I got to this person, to the point where I was actually doing the abacus audit. And I kid you not, I all of a sudden realized, hey man, this is who you're talking about. So with that being said, let's get into Jesus. All right. So we're going to start with the letter J. And as I said, this is like a T, or it could be seen, if you take that cross off the top, it can be seen as an I with an arch, which could be a C down here, or it could be a U. Okay. In either case, this is a masculine I or T with a feminine energy or arc. Okay. A womb or a cup. All right. Let's look at Jesus, Zeus, and Zagon. I want you to keep in mind what I said earlier about the N and the Z being interchangeable in this case. I want you to keep in mind that the N and the Z are two iterations of the same number. You just have the Z, which is turned forward, and you have the N, which is the Z turned downward, right? But you could also say that S is another iteration, or a softer, more feminine iteration of the letter Z. So I'm going to say that the N, the Z, and the S are the same. And this is how I decode. And by taking out these three letters between the Jesus, Zeus, and Zagon, and for those that don't know, I did a diagram breakdown on Zagon as an entity, which is the 61st demon of Goetia from the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon. And this is a demon that governs 33 legions, okay? And it also can turn water to wine. Who else can turn water to wine? We know who turned water to wine. And what reason would you have to want to turn water to wine? Now let's think about this in the context of what water actually represents. Water is the feminine energy. You have earth, wind, fire, water. Water and earth are the feminine, and air and fire are the masculine. Okay, so when you talk about turning water into wine, you're talking about fermenting it. You're talking about crushing the grapes, because grapes and fruit, grapes are like 80% water. And if you're talking about crushing the grapes to turn it or ferment it into wine, what you're doing is making the water bitter. Okay, and where else do we have a representation of waters turning bitter? We have wormwood. Okay, Zagon turns water into wine, and so does Jesus. Okay, taking out the N, Z, and the S out of all three, what it leaves me with in Jesus and Zagon is JEU, which is equal to 9 if you add the gematria. And then you have from Zagon, you have AGA, which is equal also to 9 in gematria. And I went ahead and added JAY because his name is JZ. It's like saying Jesus, okay, or Jesus. When you say this in Spanish, this is how you pronounce it. Jesus is an iteration of Zeus, okay? And you got to this Zeus through Yeshua being translated into the Greek and from the Greek into the English language, and the J was added much later, okay? But I'm here to show you that Yeshua in the Hebrew and Jesus is not the same entity, okay? And when you're using this word, you're using the words, or you're using the name of Zagon, which is a demonic spirit from the 72 demons of Goetia, and this particular entity can turn water into wine. You have the iteration of J In Spanish, when you pronounce it, it's iterated as an H. Okay, so you say Jesus, right? And Zagon and Jesus have in common the number 33 because, again, Jesus fasted in the wilderness at the age of 30. This is in Luke chapter 4. And he was on his ministry teaching for 3.5 years. And if he was teaching for 3.5 years after the fasting, which was the marker for his ministry, then that means that he was crucified at 33 years old. So again, you have the connection between Zagon and Jesus with the water to wine, and you have the 33, okay? And the bitterness of turning water to bitter is pointing towards wormwood, okay? And wormwood is mentioned twice in the Bible, which we will get into. I want you to take note of douce, okay? And this is a wine. And douce means deuce, okay? And deuce is the same as Zeus. And when you look at the word douce, it breaks down again to the same number for this entity, which is 941. This is her birthday, which is 9/4/1981. If you add 8 plus 1 equals 9, and 19 equals 10, and 10 is just 1. So there you have it. 9 and 1 equals 10 and equals 1. So it's 941, okay? And when you look at the two scriptures that wormwood is mentioned in, Exodus 15:25, that equals 4, which is your crossroads. And then you have Revelations 8:10-11, where it's mentioned. And this is your 2, if you add all of that together, because 8 plus 3 equals 11 equals 2. And as I said, the number 2 is a representation of the Baphomet. Okay, so here you have the crossroads and you have the inverted number, or the B, all right, which is the Baphomet, all right, or it's the intersex being. And then there's a mention of the third angel, okay, making a third of the water bitters. And there's a reason why this 33 is mentioned here.